So there could be some big changes coming down the pike for the Big 12.
There better be.
So the Big 12, as presently constructed, it has 10 teams. Obviously, when
Right.
they lost 4 teams, and they added 2 with TCU and West Virginia. And there are, but they have kind of to me, they are unsustainable in the sense that of the Power 5 conferences, they are the smallest, and they're the only one without a championship game, which has famously, quote-unquote, come back to haunt Big 12 teams, a la 2014 with Baylor TCU, that not playing that kind of kept one of those teams out of the college football playoff. And so the Big 12 has recently proposed to deregulate how conference championship games work.
Right.
Essentially, to get into the weeds of the NCAA, which is a very dangerous game because the NCAA is stupid.
And there are a lot of moving parts in this one.
But the rule is that if you have fewer than 12 teams, you have to file you can only have a championship game if you file a waiver with the NCAA. They have to grant you, say, yes, even though you don't meet the requirements for a championship game, we will let you have a championship game.
Yes.
Well, this was 2 years ago. They filed when they realigned and when they had first had 10 teams. They said, okay, we will, they said we would like a waiver.
Yeah.
And the NCAA said no. They said, no, you cannot have a championship game.
Right.
So now, 3 years later maybe, they have come back to the table and said, listen, we really want this, and if we need to change the rules about it, then we need to change the rules about it. And so they are proposing that it would allow a rule that would allow a conference to hold a title game without splitting into divisions or expanding to 12 teams. So that calls into question, what is the future of the Big 12?
Right.
Now, there are reports and rumors and rumblings and scuttlebutt.
I'm honestly surprised how often the rumors are changing. I thought a couple days ago, it seemed pretty set in stone that everyone was going to be okay with the waiver. You will get your championship game, and you won't have to expand. Suddenly today, I feel like the more I read, the more it's going to get contentious.
I think it's going to get contentious, but I think in the end, the NCAA or the powers that be will let the Big 12 have we'll let them have a conference championship
Without
game.
expanding.
Without expanding.
Bad news for people like Houston, who are begging to get into the conference.
Houston, Central Florida, Connecticut, Cincinnati, BYU, all these others that were hoping to get the call up to the Big 12.
Yes.
It may not be happening.
As a fellow child of the Big 12,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? Do you think they should be forced to expand or no? Would you be happier if they expanded?
So there's a couple to unpack my feelings. We have to start with one overarching thought, which is that I think there is another seismic shift in conferences coming. I think there's another time, either in 2 years or in 4 years or in 6 years, that we are going to shuffle everything up again.
Yep. Because
I think that there's money to be made, and I think that all we're doing right now is we're changing things from a micro perspective in advance of changing things in a macro perspective.
Right.
I am a believer that eventually we're going to have the super conferences. That we're going to have basically 4 conferences that run the whole thing. And I think for me, if I was running the Big 12, I would be on the phone with the ACC asking if they want to merge.
Right.
Because there are these are the only 2 conferences that do not have a network. The Big 10 has a network, the SEC has a network, the Pac-12 has a network. Yes, the Longhorn Network exists, but that's its own entity, its own weird thing. I think you could take that and merge it turn it into a Big 12 ACC network.
Right.
And then you could get ahead of the game. And then all of a sudden, you are saying, okay, here we are. We are this 24-team conference with a massive footprint,
right,
with a massive TV network that you can then go get a massive TV deal.
Yeah.
And go into the. I'm a big fan of the 4 pods idea that you have four divisions.
Yeah.
But I think that would be. I think that would be the long-term thing. And then you, instead of being reactive, which is what the Big 12 has been, because they've been getting their teams plucked, you can be proactive. And you can be like, well, we're set for the super conferences. Whenever you guys want to do your thing, that's fine, but we're set.
That's pretty gamey. Yeah.
I think that if, the Big 12 is in a battle for its life.
Yeah.
It is the odd man out right now. That of the Power 5 conferences, they're the odd duck.
Okay.
And if you're going to not be the odd duck, you have got to change. And I think that so that all said, I do think that if you're not going to go and make that big move, then I think you should expand. And I think you should go to 12 or to 14. I think that Houston's a slam dunk. They should be in the conference already. I think that they make a ton of sense. I think that you have to find a team that bridges the geographic gap between you and West Virginia.
Probably Cincinnati.
If you want to get crazy, you could add a team like Connecticut. You could add a team like BYU. Although, for all the people who are like, oh, well, why wouldn't BYU join the conference? Well, same reason Notre Dame doesn't join a conference. Because they print money as an independent.
Yeah.
Like, BYU going independent was the smartest thing they ever did.
Right. The only reason they have any motivation in any of this is the clear perception that no one even thinks twice about them when it comes to the playoff.
And that's exactly right, is that Notre Dame, because they've been an independent for so long, and they've got kind of tenure, and they've got that tradition, they kind of get grandfathered in, and they're treated the same way that, like, if Ohio State was an independent, then they'd be treated. I think they should expand. Okay. I don't think they will. I don't think they will because I think they like the money too much. Because right now, the way it's set up, that if you have X amount of money and you're dividing it by 10, then even if that money goes up by a little bit, you're still dividing it by 2 more. Right. And you're getting less. So to me, I think that they will grant a waiver. I don't think they'll expand right now. But I do think that 4 to 6 years down the road, we're due for another big seismic shift. Now, you have a conspiracy theory.
I do.
What is your
My conspiracy theory is the other conference commissioners are totally cool with them keeping it small so that they can cannibalize the Big 12 later.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you basically do the super conference thing that you just suggested, but in reverse. Keep them small, and then when it comes time to expand again, eat them up.
Then those are the teams that you can pick off.
Absolutely rip them apart.
Yeah, well, which makes sense.
Which terrifies me as the Iowa State fan because the Iowa State will end up in the MAC or something like that.
They might. You don't think the Big Ten's going to come calling?
No. That would be actually I would rather be in the MAC than the Big Ten.
Whoa!
I hate the Big Ten that much.
Wow. Which is weird because you're from Big Ten country.
No, I'm a child of the Big 8.
I guess.
Yeah. Sorry.
What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with conference realignment? Hashtag DCTF Live is how you can get in touch with the show. It's interesting.
I also think another wrench that could get thrown into it.
Yeah.
If they agree to expand the playoff to 8 teams and 5 automatic bids for 5 conference champions might help preserve the 5 conferences.
Now, that's an interesting thought as well. Yeah. I think that this could go any which way, but for me, right now, I do think that they're going to let them have a conference championship game without dividing into divisions. Yeah. And I think they'll get away with it.
I think you're right. I think the baller move in all this
would be just to be
super conference with ACC.
Yeah, just do it.
No question.
Let's just.
I had never even thought of that, and I'm a little impressed, and I'm ashamed to say that out loud in front of you.
Thanks, man.